Have you ever heard the name Stanislav Petrov? Probably not. But on September 26, 1983, this one man, a lieutenant colonel in the Soviet Air Defense Forces, held the fate of the entire world in his hands. And what he did, or rather, what he didn't do, is the reason you and I are here today. Our story begins in a secret bunker, deep within the Soviet Union. The Cold War is at its absolute peak. Tensions between the United States and the Soviet Union are stretched to a breaking point. Both sides have thousands of nuclear missiles aimed at each other, ready to launch at a moment's notice. It's a terrifying concept called mutually assured destruction, or MAD. The logic was simple. If one side launched, the other would launch back, and civilization, as we knew it, would end in a nuclear winter. On this particular night, Stanislav Petrov was the duty officer at Serpukhov, the command center for the Soviet Union's early warning satellite system. His job was to monitor these satellites, which were designed to detect the launch of American intercontinental ballistic missiles, or ICBMs. It was a high-stress job, but for the most part, it was a waiting game until it wasn't. Just past midnight, the silence in the bunker was shattered by a wailing siren. A massive screen, which had been dark moments before, flashed with a single, terrifying word: launch. The system was reporting that a single missile had been launched from a U.S. base and was heading toward the Soviet Union. Imagine the scene: red lights flashing, sirens blaring, and every single person in that room looking at Petrov. Protocol was crystal clear. His duty was to verify the threat and immediately report it up the chain of command to his superiors. From there, the decision to retaliate would be made by the top Soviet leadership. But given the high alert status, a retaliatory strike was almost a foregone conclusion. The entire process, from detection to retaliation, was designed to take only minutes. There was no time for hesitation. Petrov's heart pounded in his chest. He felt a surge of adrenaline, but also a cold dread. He looked at the screen. One missile. It seemed strange. A first strike from the United States. The ultimate act of aggression would surely be a massive, overwhelming attack, not a single, lone missile. It didn't make strategic sense. Launching just one missile would guarantee a full-scale Soviet retaliation while doing minimal damage in return. It was illogical. As his team scrambled around him, shouting confirmations of the alert, a second siren went off. Another missile launch detected. Then a third, a fourth, and a fifth. The screen now read that 5 missiles were in the air, all heading for Soviet territory. The system was screaming that a nuclear attack was underway. The electronic maps were flashing, tracking the supposed trajectory of the American ICBM. The pressure on Petrov was immense. His subordinates were yelling at him, urging him to report it. Every second that ticked by was a second closer to impact. Every protocol, every drill, every bit of his training screamed at him to pick up the phone and inform his superiors. This was it. The moment everyone had feared for decades. But something inside Petrov, a deep-seated intuition, a gut feeling, held him back. He was a trained analyst, a scientist by education. He had helped design this very system. He knew its strengths, but he also suspected its weaknesses. He stared at the data pouring in. 5 missiles. It still felt wrong. Too small for a genuine first strike. He had to make a choice, and he had to make it in the next few minutes. On one hand, there was the computer system, a multi-billion-ruble network of cutting-edge satellites and ground computers, all declaring with 100% certainty that they were under attack. Disobeying it was unthinkable. If he was wrong, and the missiles were real, his inaction would mean the decapitation of the Soviet Union's leadership and the loss of millions of lives. He would go down in history as a traitor, the man who failed his country in its darkest hour. On the other hand, there was his own human judgment, his gut feeling that this was a mistake. If he reported it as a real attack, he would be setting in motion a chain of events that could not be stopped. Soviet leader Yuri Andropov, deeply suspicious of the West, would almost certainly have ordered a full-scale retaliatory launch. The world would be plunged into a nuclear holocaust that would kill billions and irradiate the planet for generations. In that moment of unimaginable pressure, Stanislav Petrov made a decision. He chose to trust his humanity over the machine. He picked up the direct line to the Soviet military command. His voice was firm, though his hand trembled. He reported the alarm. But then, he did something extraordinary. He declared it a false alarm. He told his superiors that the system was malfunctioning. You can imagine the reaction on the other end of the line. Disbelief. Anger. Are you sure? They must have demanded. He held his ground, staking his life and the fate of the world on his hunch. He argued that if it were a real attack, it would involve hundreds of missiles, not Hoost 5. He reasoned that the satellite might be misinterpreting something else, a glitch in the system. For the next 15 minutes, Petrov and his team endured the most terrifying weight of their lives. They watched the screens, expecting either the system to correct itself or 4 nuclear explosions to confirm their worst fears. It was an eternity of agonizing silence, broken only by the hum of the computers. And then, nothing happened. The trajectories on the screen timed out. No missiles arrived. No explosions were detected by ground radar. The world continued to turn. Petrov had been right. It was a false alarm. Later investigations revealed what had happened. The Soviet satellites had a very specific orbital path that, on that particular day, caused them to be perfectly aligned with the sun, reflecting off high-altitude clouds over North Dakota. The highly sensitive sensors had mistaken the intense sunlight for the engine flare of launching ICBM. It was a 1 in a billion cosmic alignment, a freak accident of light and technology. Because of the extreme secrecy of the incident, Petrov's story wasn't told for over a decade. He wasn't hailed as a hero. In fact, he was reprimanded by his superiors, not for his decision, which was proven correct, but for failing to properly document the events in the logbook during the chaos. He was eventually reassigned and took early retirement, living a quiet life on a small pension. For years, the world had no idea how close it came to annihilation, or who was responsible for saving it. It wasn't until the fall of the Soviet Union that his story slowly came to light. He received several international awards and was recognized as the man who saved the world. Yet, he remained humble, never seeing himself as a hero. Oft inside, I was just in the right place at the right time. But it was more than that. It was a moment where human reason, intuition, and a profound understanding of the bigger picture triumphed over rigid protocol and flawed technology. Stanislav Petrov's story is a powerful reminder that in our increasingly automated world, the final, most critical decisions often rest on the wisdom and courage of a single human being. He stared into the abyss and chose not to jump, and for that, we all owe him a debt of gratitude that can never truly be repaid. Thank you so much for watching. If this story moved you, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more incredible stories from history. We'd love to have you as part of our community. See you in the next one.